The first contact came without warning, a symphony of light and impossible geometry that shattered humanity's perception of isolation. At precisely 3:47 hours Universal Standard Time, massive crystalline ships materialized in Earth's orbital space, their surfaces rippling with configurations that defied known dimensional physics. In the global command center beneath the United Planetary Research Complex, scientists and military personnel froze. Screens flickered with impossible data streams, holographic displays dancing with signals that seemed to exist between reality and imagination. Dr. Elena Rodriguez gripped the edge of her workstation, her breath catching in her throat as the initial transmission began to resolve. The lead communications specialist, a veteran of countless international protocols, leaned into his microphone. "Unidentified vessels. This is Earth Global Defense. State your identity and intention." Silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then the response came, not in words, but in a cascade of visual and neural information that bypassed traditional communication methods. It was less a message and more an experience, flooding every screen, every neural interface, every communication network on the planet simultaneously. Images of entire star systems being consumed by a darkness more absolute than any void flickered like a nightmare. Civilizations older than human history crumbled into cosmic dust. Entire planetary networks collapsed, their billions of inhabitants vanishing in moments of unimaginable destruction. And through it all, a singular, desperate plea. Humanity was the last hope. The Galactic Confederation, a network of advanced civilizations that had existed for millions of years, had exhausted every known strategy. Their most advanced species, races that had mastered interstellar travel millennia before humans discovered electricity, had fallen before a threat they couldn't comprehend. The quantum devourers, a cosmic phenomenon that consumed not just matter, but the very fabric of reality, moved with a logic so alien that it defied all existing scientific understanding. In the command center, Dr. Rodriguez accessed historical records, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces. The alien transmission contained fragments of scientific data so complex that it would take traditional research teams decades to decode. But humans had never been traditional. "We're receiving multiple data streams," announced Maria Gonzalez, the senior quantum communication specialist. "It's not just a message, it's a comprehensive invite. No, a desperate request for intervention." Global leaders were assembled within hours. The United Nations emergency session looked nothing like its historical counterparts. Representatives from every continent sat alongside holographic projections of alien diplomats, crystalline beings from the Zorn Collective, energy-based life forms from the Nexus Concordance, silicon-based intelligences from the Quantum Weave. The alien representatives looked distinctly uncomfortable. Humanity's reputation preceded them, a young, volatile species known for unpredictability and rapid technological advancement. Where other civilizations spent centuries perfecting a single technological approach, humans changed entire paradigms in decades. "We understand this sounds impossible," translated a representative from the Zorn Collective, its crystalline form shifting with each word. "But you are our final option." The room fell silent. The threat they described was beyond comprehension. The quantum devourers weren't simply destroying planets or civilizations. They were consuming the very mathematical foundations of reality. Each system they approached became a blank slate, erased from existence as if it had never been. Conventional weapons were useless. Advanced shield technologies collapsed like paper against their approach. Even the most sophisticated predictive algorithms failed to understand their method of destruction. Dr. Rodriguez studied the data, her mind racing. Something about the transmission felt different. It wasn't just a plea for help. It was an invitation to solve a puzzle that had stumped the most advanced civilizations in the known universe. "We'll need a team," she said quietly, her eyes never leaving the cascading data. "Not just scientists. We'll need people who can think differently. Engineers, artists, philosophers, mathematicians, anyone who can look at a problem and see something others can't." The alien diplomats exchanged uncertain glances. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its capacity for unexpected solutions. Where other species saw immovable problems, humans saw complex puzzles waiting to be solved. The cosmic clock was ticking. The quantum devourers were advancing. And humanity had just been handed the most important challenge in the history of intelligent life. The global think tank assembled in record time was unlike any research group in human history. Converted from an abandoned particle accelerator complex in the Swiss Alps, the facility became a crucible of impossible ideas. Workstations stretched across massive chambers, holographic displays dancing with equations that seemed to defy traditional mathematical logic. General Marcus Chen stood at the center of the chaos, watching as brilliant minds from every conceivable discipline converge. Quantum physicists conversed with indigenous storytellers. Neuroscientists collaborated with abstract artists. Computer engineers traded notes with environmental psychologists. The traditional boundaries of knowledge dissolved, replaced by a singular, desperate mission. Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived with a stack of data crystals that contained the Galactic Confederation's transmission. Each crystal pulsed with information so dense that traditional computer systems would take decades to process a fraction of its content. But humans had always been good at finding shortcuts. "We're not looking at a conventional threat," she announced to the assembled team. The room fell silent, a mix of brilliant minds from 53 different countries, representing every major scientific and creative discipline. Professor Hiroshi Nakamura, a quantum mechanics expert from Tokyo University, projected a holographic representation of the quantum devourer's attack pattern. The visualization was a nightmare of mathematical precision, a consuming darkness that moved with algorithmic certainty, erasing entire star systems with a logic so alien it bordered on the incomprehensible. "Traditional defense systems are useless," Nakamura explained. The hologram showed shield technologies collapsing like wet paper, advanced weapon systems becoming nothing more than momentary sparks against an overwhelming darkness. They don't just destroy. They uncreate. They remove the very mathematical foundation that allows a system to exist. A young environmental designer named Sophia Rice stepped forward. Her background in complex ecosystem modeling gave her a unique perspective. "It's like a computational virus," she said, manipulating the hologram. But not just a virus that attacks a system. A virus that rewrites the fundamental rules of how that system can exist. The room buzzed with a mixture of terror and excitement. This was a problem that defied every known approach to defense, warfare, or survival. General Chen understood something crucial. They needed to think beyond military strategy. This wasn't a battle to be won with conventional weapons or tactical approaches. This was a problem that required a completely new way of understanding existence itself. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up another projection, a seemingly random collection of data points that looked more like abstract art than scientific information. "The Confederation's transmission includes more than just threat data," she explained. "It's a puzzle, a challenge. They're not just asking us to fight. They're asking us to understand." The team worked in shifts that blended together, losing all sense of traditional time. Mathematicians developed new computational models that could predict chaos. Linguists studied the transmission's communication patterns, searching for any hint of understandable logic. Artists created visual representations that might reveal hidden patterns invisible to traditional scientific approaches. Professor Elena Gomes, a specialist in computational linguistics, made the first breakthrough. "It's not random," she announced during a late-night session. Her display showed the transmission's data transformed into a complex visual language. "It's a communication method so advanced that it looks like chaos to our current understanding." The implications were staggering. The quantum devourers weren't just a destructive force. They were a form of intelligence so different from human comprehension that their very existence challenged everything humans understood about consciousness, mathematics, and reality. General Chen watched the team with a mixture of pride and concern. Military training had taught him that the best solutions often came from the most unexpected places, This team wasn't just preparing a defense. They were rewriting the fundamental understanding of cosmic interaction. "We need more," Dr. Rodriguez muttered, her eyes never leaving the cascading data. "We need to think beyond what we know is possible." The team worked with a sense of urgency that transcended national boundaries, scientific disciplines, or personal ambitions. They were no longer just researchers or military strategists. They were the last line of defense for not just humanity, but potentially all intelligent life in the universe. As another day blended into night, the impossible began to take shape. Not a weapon, not a shield, but something entirely new. An approach to existence that could potentially challenge the quantum devourers on their own incomprehensible terms. The cosmic clock continued to tick, and humanity was just beginning to understand the true nature of the challenge before them. The first prototype of humanity's defensive system looked nothing like a traditional weapon or shield. Spread across 3 continents, the network resembled a living organism more than a technological defense mechanism. Each component was designed to be simultaneously predictable and completely unpredictable, a paradox that fascinated and terrified the alien scientific observers. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the primary control center, watching as holographic representations of the system pulsed with an almost organic rhythm. What appeared to be chaos was actually the most sophisticated adaptive network ever conceived. Inspired by everything from neural networks to crowd behavior patterns, the defense system could reshape itself faster than any threat could comprehend. Professor Hiroshi Nakamura approached the main console, his fingers dancing across interfaces that seemed to breathe and shift with each touch. "It's not just a defense system," he explained to the gathered alien representatives. "It's a living computational organism." The Zorn Collective's representative, a crystalline being that shifted color with each emotional nuance, looked bewildered. Where their civilization had spent millennia developing precise, mathematically perfect defense technologies, humans had created something that defied all logical categorization. Sophia Reyes, the environmental designer, had been crucial to the system's development. Her work on complex ecosystem interactions provided the key breakthrough. "Think of it like an immune system," she explained, pulling up a holographic demonstration. "Not just a single response, but a network that learns, adapts, and transforms with each interaction." The defensive network drew inspiration from the most unexpected sources: biological immune responses, crowd psychology, ecological adaptation, quantum uncertainty principles. Each component could communicate, shift, and respond in milliseconds, a level of adaptive capability that seemed to exist in a state between technology and living intelligence. General Marcus Chen watched the alien observers carefully. Their expressions revealed a mixture of confusion, fear, and reluctant admiration. Humanity was doing something no other civilization had even considered, treating defense as a living, breathing system rather than a static technological solution. "Traditional shields work like walls," Chen explained during a briefing. "Our system works like a living membrane. It doesn't just block. It understands. It learns. It transforms." The prototype covered an area equivalent to 3 planetary surfaces, a network of quantum processors, adaptive materials, and computational systems that could reshape themselves faster than light could travel. Each node was simultaneously a sensor, a defensive unit, and a learning system. Dr. Rodriguez demonstrated the system's capabilities by introducing increasingly complex simulated threats. Where traditional defense systems would fail, this network adapted. It didn't just respond. It anticipated, learned, and transformed. An incoming energy pulse would be met not with a static shield, but with a dynamic response that seemed to predict and neutralize the threat before it fully materialized. The alien scientific team struggled to comprehend the approach. Their technologies were based on millions of years of refinement, precise, calculated, mathematically perfect. Humanity's solution looked like controlled chaos, a computational system that seemed to break every known rule of defensive strategy. "We're not just defending," Sophia Rise explained during a critical presentation. We're creating a living response to a threat that defies traditional understanding. Each component of the network could communicate, learn, and adapt. Inspired by everything from immune system responses to internet routing protocols, the defense system existed in a state of constant transformation. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a shield. It was something entirely new. Professor Nakamura introduced a series of increasingly complex threat simulations. The network responded with solutions that seemed to emerge from nowhere. Adaptive responses that defied traditional computational logic. Where other civilizations saw immovable problems, the human team saw complex puzzles waiting to be solved. The Zorn Collective's lead scientist made a remarkable observation. They're treating quantum mechanics like a street fight, not a precise mathematical dance. As the prototype underwent final testing, something extraordinary became clear. Humanity had created more than a defensive system. They had developed a new approach to understanding existence itself, a method of interaction that could potentially challenge threats beyond traditional comprehension. The cosmic clock continued to tick. The quantum devourers were advancing, and humanity had just introduced a defense mechanism that existed in a state between technology and living intelligence, a solution so unexpected that it might just save everything. The first encounter with the quantum devourers happened in the Epsilon Crucis star system, a region once teeming with 6 advanced civilizations. Now, it was nothing more than a testing ground for humanity's most radical defense strategy. Commander Sarah Mitchell sat in the primary control pod of the lead defensive vessel, her hands hovering over interfaces that seemed to breathe and shift with each passing moment. Around her, a fleet of ships moved with a fluidity that defied every known principle of space combat. They were not a traditional formation, but a living, adaptive network that responded to threats faster than thought. Incoming quantum distortion, announced her co-pilot, Marcus Rodriguez. The holographic displays erupted with patterns of mathematical complexity that would have driven traditional navigators mad. But this crew was anything but traditional. The quantum devourers approached like a wave of absolute darkness, consuming mathematical foundations of reality itself. Where they passed, star systems simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but completely uncreated, as if they had never been. Mitchell's fleet didn't fight like any military force in cosmic history. They moved like a school of fish, like a flock of birds, like a living organism with multiple points of consciousness. Each ship was both an individual unit and part of a greater adaptive whole. They darted, weaved, and repositioned with a logic that seemed to exist between mathematics and intuition. Quantum resonance at 78%, Rodriguez called out. The ships began to shift, their very molecular structure adapting to the incoming threat. Traditional shields would have collapsed instantly, but this was something entirely different. The alien observation ships, representatives from the Galactic Confederation, watched in stunned silence. The human fleet moved with an unpredictability that completely confused the quantum devourers. Where other civilizations had tried to match the threat with precise, calculated responses, humans introduced an element of controlled chaos. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's adaptive network came to life. The defensive system was more than a technological solution. It was a living, thinking entity that could predict and counter threats faster than any computer could calculate. Each ship was a node in a massive interconnected neural network that learned and adapted in real time. "They're trying to establish a computational pattern," Mitchell muttered, her hands dancing across the control interfaces. "We won't let them." The battle defied every principle of space combat. Human ships used gravitational fields like playground equipment, sliding between quantum states, existing simultaneously in multiple positions. They weren't fighting the quantum devourers. They were confusing them, introducing an element of uncertainty that the cosmic threat couldn't comprehend. Professor Hiroshi Nakamura had theorized that the quantum devourers operated on absolute predictability. They consumed reality by understanding, and then eliminating its fundamental mathematical foundations. Humanity's response was to introduce absolute unpredictability. Quantum resonance shifting, Rodriguez announced. The ships began to move in patterns that seemed to defy the laws of physics. They existed in multiple states simultaneously, their very existence a mathematical paradox that the quantum devourers couldn't process. The darkness of the threat began to waver. For the first time since its emergence, the quantum devourers encountered something they couldn't immediately uncreate. The human fleet wasn't just defending. They were challenging the very fundamental principles of the threat's existence. Adaptive network at maximum potential, Mitchell called out. The ships around her began to pulse with an energy that seemed to exist between matter and possibility. They were more than machines. They were a living, thinking response to a cosmic threat. The observation ships from the Galactic Confederation transmitted data streams that showed something unprecedented. The human fleet wasn't just surviving. They were pushing back against a threat that had consumed entire civilizations in moments. One of the alien scientific representatives made a remarkable observation. Their fighting like the universe is a complex puzzle, not a battlefield. As the encounter continued, something extraordinary became clear. Humanity had done more than create a defense mechanism. They had introduced a new way of understanding existence itself, a method of interaction that existed between technology, mathematics, and pure imagination. The quantum devourers retreated for the first time in their known history, not defeated, not destroyed, but utterly, completely confused. The cosmic clock continued to tick, but now, humanity had shown that they were more than just another civilization. They were a force of pure adaptive possibility. The aftermath of the first successful encounter against the quantum devourers transformed the Galactic Confederation's understanding of humanity. Delegation ships from across the known universe began streaming to Earth, each hoping to understand the impossible strategy that had momentarily halted the cosmic threat. In the International Collaboration Center located in the Swiss Alps, species from across the galaxy gathered. Crystalline beings from the Zorn Collective stood alongside energy-based life forms from the Nexus Concordance. Silicon-based intelligences from the Quantum Weave conversed with gaseous entities from the spiral domains. And at the center of it all were humans, not as conquering heroes, but as collaborative problem solvers. Dr. Elena Rodriguez facilitated the most complex diplomatic gathering in cosmic history. Where other civilizations had rigid communication protocols, humans introduced a collaborative approach that broke every existing diplomatic rule. Teams were formed not by species or technological advancement, but by creative potential. A Krillian war strategist named Shirin observed the human approach with growing fascination. "They don't see barriers," he commented to his colleague. "Where we see differences, they see potential connections." The collaborative teams began to take shape in ways no one had anticipated. A linguistic expert from the methane-based spiral domains worked alongside a quantum physicist from Earth. An artist from a crystalline civilization collaborated with a military strategist. Each team became a microcosm of the larger strategy. Adaptive, unpredictable, constantly transforming. Professor Hiroshi Nakamura introduced a revolutionary concept: collaborative intelligence networks. Traditional galactic approaches to problem-solving relied on hierarchical structures and species-specific methodologies. Humans proposed something entirely different, a network where individual strengths could combine in unexpected ways. "We're not looking for the perfect solution," Rodriguez explained during a critical briefing. "We're looking for 1,000 imperfect solutions that, when combined, create something extraordinary." The alien delegation struggled to comprehend the approach. Their civilizations had spent millennia developing precise, specialized communication and problem-solving methods. Humanity was proposing something that looked like controlled chaos, a collaborative approach that defied every existing principle of strategic planning. Sophia Reyes, the environmental designer who had been crucial to the defensive network's development, led a workshop on adaptive systems. She used examples from Earth's most complex ecosystems, rainforests, coral reefs, neural networks, to demonstrate how diversity and unexpected connections could create resilience. "Look at how a forest responds to a threat," She demonstrated, using holographic projections that showed complex ecological interactions. It doesn't have a single defense mechanism. It has thousands of interconnected responses that work together. The collaborative teams began developing strategies that combine the unique capabilities of multiple species. A communication method developed by the Nexus Concordance was integrated with a quantum prediction model from Earth. A defensive technology from the Zorn Collective was reimagined using artistic principles developed by a methane-based civilization. General Marcus Chen oversaw the strategic development, understanding something crucial. This was more than a military collaboration. This was a fundamental reimagining of how intelligent life could interact and solve problems. The Krillian War strategist Shirin made a profound observation. Humans don't see other species as competitors or obstacles. They see potential partners in a complex, adaptive puzzle. As the collaborative networks grew, something extraordinary emerged. It wasn't just a defense strategy against the quantum devourers. It was a new way of understanding existence itself, a method of interaction that transcended individual species, technological limitations, and traditional understanding of intelligence. The alien delegations began to see humanity differently. No longer were they a young, volatile species. They were architects of a new approach to cosmic challenge, creators of connection in a universe that had grown too comfortable with separation. Dr. Rodriguez looked out over the assembled teams, a gathering of species that would have been impossible just months earlier. The quantum devourers were still advancing. But now, something fundamental had changed. Humanity had introduced a simple, radical concept. True strength comes not from individual perfection, but from the ability to connect, adapt, and imagine beyond known boundaries. The cosmic clock continued to tick, but now it ticked with a rhythm of collective possibility. The breakthrough came during a late-night research session that defied every conventional approach to scientific discovery. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been working for 36 consecutive hours, surrounded by holographic projections that danced with mathematical impossibilities. Professor Hiroshi Nakamura stood beside her, a half-empty cup of synthetic coffee forgotten on a nearby console. The quantum mechanics expert watched as Rodriguez manipulated data streams that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. What appeared to be chaos was actually the most sophisticated computational analysis ever attempted. "It's not about predicting the quantum devourers," Rodriguez muttered, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces. "It's about understanding the fundamental nature of their existence." The research team had assembled the most diverse group of minds in cosmic history. Quantum physicists worked alongside abstract artists. Neuroscientists collaborated with indigenous storytellers. Environmental designers shared insights with mathematical theorists. Where other civilizations saw boundaries, humans saw potential connections. Sophia Reyes, the environmental design specialist, made the first critical observation. "They're not just consuming reality," she explained, projecting a complex holographic model. "They're rewriting the fundamental mathematical language of existence." The implications were staggering. The quantum devourers didn't just destroy. They uncreated, removing the very computational foundation that allowed a system to exist. Traditional defense mechanisms were useless because they operated on a fundamentally different understanding of reality. General Marcus Chen watched the team work, understanding something crucial. This wasn't a battle to be won with conventional weapons or tactical approaches. This was a problem that required reimagining the very nature of existence. "We need to introduce deliberate randomness," Professor Nakamura announced suddenly. The room fell silent. The team's breakthrough came from an unexpected combination of quantum mechanics, complex ecosystem modeling, and abstract artistic principles. They discovered that the quantum devourers operated on a form of computational perfection, a system that could only process absolute, predictable patterns. Rodriguez pulled up a visualization that looked more like an abstract painting than a scientific model. "Randomness," she explained, "is the one thing they cannot comprehend." The weapon they developed was nothing like a traditional defensive system. It was a computational method that weaponized unpredictability itself. By introducing deliberate, complex randomness into quantum systems, they could create a response that the quantum devourers could not process or uncreate. It's like an immune system response, Sophia Rise explained during a critical presentation. Not just a single defense, but a living, adaptive approach that can reshape itself faster than the threat can comprehend. The alien scientific observers from the Galactic Confederation watched in a mixture of confusion and growing admiration. Where their civilizations had spent millennia developing precise, mathematically perfect technologies, humans had created something that existed in a state between mathematics and pure imagination. Professor Nakamura demonstrated the breakthrough using a series of increasingly complex simulations. The computational model could introduce randomness so sophisticated that it essentially created a new form of mathematical language, one that existed between predictability and pure chaos. We're not just defending, Rodriguez explained. We're creating a new way of understanding existence itself. The weapon was less a traditional defensive mechanism and more a living computational organism. It could reshape itself faster than the quantum devourers could process, introducing levels of uncertainty that defied the fundamental principles of the threat's existence. One of the alien scientific representatives made a remarkable observation. They're treating the universe like a complex, adaptive puzzle, not a set of fixed mathematical rules. As the final tests were conducted, something extraordinary became clear. Humanity had done more than develop a defensive strategy. They had introduced a new approach to understanding reality, a method of interaction that existed between technology, mathematics, and pure possibility. The Galactic Confederation's lead scientists struggled to comprehend the breakthrough. They've discovered something beyond our understanding, he muttered, a way of existing that challenges the very foundation of how we perceive reality. The cosmic clock continued to tick. The quantum devourers were still advancing. But now, humanity had introduced a computational weapon more powerful than any traditional defense, the ability to exist in a state of pure, adaptive possibility. Randomness became their shield, unpredictability, their weapon, and imagination, their ultimate defense. The final mission was not a military deployment. It was an act of collective human imagination that would define the species' place in the cosmic narrative. Commander Sarah Mitchell stood on the bridge of the primary vessel, surrounded by a crew that represented the most diverse team ever assembled. Scientists, artists, mathematicians, and military strategists worked in perfect synchronization. Their ship was more than a vessel. It was a living computational system designed to challenge the very foundations of reality. "We're not just fighting," Mitchell announced to her crew. "We're solving the most complex puzzle in universal history." The mission parameters were beyond anything previously conceived. They would use themselves as a quantum disruptor, transforming the ship and its crew into a living weapon of pure, adaptive possibility. Each crew member wore a neural interface that connected them not just to the ship, but to each other in a way that transcended traditional understanding of consciousness. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the quantum systems, her fingers dancing across interfaces that seemed to breathe and shift with each moment. Beside her, Professor Hiroshi Nakamura worked on computational models that existed in multiple states simultaneously. The ship itself was a marvel of human innovation, a vessel that could reshape its molecular structure faster than thought. The Galactic Confederation watched with a mixture of hope and terror. Humanity was volunteering for a mission that was essentially a calculated, potentially fatal gamble. Where other civilizations would have developed elaborate escape strategies, humans were preparing to transform themselves into the ultimate defensive mechanism. "Quantum resonance at maximum potential," announced Marcus Rodriguez, the co-pilot. The ship began to vibrate with an energy that existed between matter and pure possibility. Its molecular structure became fluid, capable of existing in multiple states simultaneously. Sophia Rise, the environmental design specialist, had been crucial to the mission's development. Her work on adaptive systems had transformed the ship into a living, thinking entity. "We're not just a vessel," she explained during the final briefing. We're a complex ecosystem designed to respond to threats in ways no one can predict. The approach to the quantum devourer's primary computational zone was unlike any cosmic approach in history. The human vessel didn't move like a traditional ship. It danced, it shifted, it existed in multiple positions simultaneously. Each movement was a complex mathematical statement that challenged the very foundations of the threat's existence. General Marcus Chen, monitoring from the ground control center, understood the mission's true nature. This wasn't just a military operation. It was a fundamental challenge to how the universe understood existence, defense, and possibility. The neural interfaces allowed the crew to function as a single adaptive organism. Their individual thoughts merged into a collective consciousness that could process information faster than any traditional computational system. They were simultaneously individuals and a unified, living computational network. Initiating quantum disruption sequence, Mitchell called out. The ship began to transform. Its molecular structure became fluid, capable of existing in multiple states simultaneously. The crew's consciousness merged, creating a computational response so complex, so unpredictable, that it existed in a state between technology and pure imagination. The quantum devourers approach, their computational darkness preparing to uncreate everything in its path. But this time, something was different. The human vessel didn't just defend. It challenged. It existed in a state of pure possibility that the threat could not comprehend. Each molecular shift was a mathematical statement that rewrote the fundamental principles of cosmic interaction. We are more than a defense. Mitchell's voice resonated through the neural network. We are a statement of possibility. The alien observation ships watched in stunned silence. The human vessel began to interact with the quantum devourers in a way that defied every known principle of cosmic warfare. It wasn't fighting. It was solving a complex, living puzzle. Professor Nakamura's computational models came to life. The ship became a living weapon of pure adaptive possibility, a computational entity that could reshape itself faster than the threat could process. As the final moments approached, something extraordinary became clear. Humanity had done more than develop a defensive strategy. They had introduced a new way of understanding existence, a method of interaction that existed between technology, mathematics, and pure imagination. The cosmic clock continued to tick, but now it ticked with a rhythm of collective possibility. Humanity was no longer just another species in the universe. They were architects of a new understanding of existence itself. The universe held its breath in the moments after the human vessel's quantum disruption sequence, where the quantum devourers had consumed entire star systems in milliseconds. Now something entirely unprecedented occurred. Silence. Then, a cascade of computational impossibility began to unfold. The Galactic Confederation watched through long-range sensors as the fundamental nature of the cosmic threat began to transform. It wasn't destruction. It wasn't defeat. It was something far more extraordinary, a complete reimagining of existence itself. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the Global Command Center, her hands pressed against the holographic displays. The data streams defied every known principle of scientific observation. The quantum devourers weren't being destroyed. They were being fundamentally understood. It's communication, Professor Hiroshi Nakamura whispered, his voice filled with a mixture of wonder and scientific excitement. Not warfare. Communication. The human mission had done something no civilization had ever conceived. They hadn't fought the cosmic threat. They had engaged with it on a level of understanding that transcended traditional concepts of conflict, defense, or survival. General Marcus Chen watched the cosmic transformation unfold. The mission was never about defeating an enemy. It was about understanding a form of existence so alien that traditional approaches of conflict were meaningless. Across the gathered alien civilizations, a fundamental shift began to occur. The Zorn Collective's representatives found their crystalline forms vibrating with a new form of comprehension. Energy-based life forms from the Nexus Concordance began to reconstruct their entire understanding of intelligence and interaction. Sophia Rice, the environmental design specialist who had been crucial to the mission's development, made a profound observation. "We didn't defeat them," she explained to the assembled scientific teams. "We communicated with them in the only language they could understand: pure, adaptive possibility." The cosmic transformation continued. The quantum devourer's computational darkness began to shift, to change, to become something entirely new. It was as if humanity had introduced a new concept of existence, a way of understanding that existed between destruction and creation. Commander Sarah Mitchell and her crew existed in a state beyond traditional consciousness. Their neural interfaces had become something more than a communication method. They were a living bridge between fundamentally different forms of cosmic intelligence. "We are more than a defense." Mitchell's consciousness resonated through the cosmic communication network. "We are a statement of possibility." The alien scientific teams struggled to comprehend what was happening. Traditional observation methods failed. The very principles of scientific analysis began to reshape themselves. Humanity had done more than solve a cosmic threat. They had introduced a new way of understanding existence. One of the Galactic Confederation's lead scientists made a remarkable statement. They didn't fight. They translated. As the transformation continued, something extraordinary became clear. The quantum devourers weren't a threat to be destroyed. They were a form of cosmic intelligence that had never found a way to communicate, to connect, to understand. Humanity had become the universal translators, not through traditional communication methods, but through a fundamental reimagining of interaction itself. The mission had transformed from a defensive strategy to the most complex act of cosmic communication in universal history. Each molecular shift, each neural connection, each moment of the human vessel's interaction became a living language that bridged incomprehensible differences. Professor Nakamura's computational models came to life in ways no one could have predicted. The mission was revealing something fundamental about the nature of intelligence, of existence, of possibility. "We are teaching them how to connect," Dr. Rodriguez explained, her voice filled with a mixture of scientific precision and profound wonder. The cosmic transformation continued. Star systems that had been uncreated began to reshape themselves. The fundamental mathematical language of existence began to rewrite itself, and at the center of it all was humanity. Not as conquerors, not as defenders, but as cosmic translators. The Galactic Confederation watched as humanity redefined the very concept of intelligence, of conflict, of existence itself. As the transformation reached its final stages, a new understanding emerged. The universe was not a place of conflict, but a complex, adaptive system waiting to be understood. Humanity had become more than a species. They were architects of a new cosmic language, a method of interaction that existed between technology, imagination, and pure possibility. The cosmic clock continued to tick, but now it ticked with a rhythm of collective understanding. Humanity was no longer just another species in the universe. They were the ultimate translators of cosmic possibility.